They can imitate you, but they can't duplicate you. Cause you got something special that makes me wanna taste you. I want it all day long, I'm addicted like it's wrong. I want it all day long, I'm addicted like it's wrong.
What up guys, my name is Kathy O and I made a DIY sushi costume. It's actually pretty simple and it was really fun to do. It does require a little bit of time, like a day or two. Like the fact that you have to buy supplies and stuff, that kind of takes a couple hours, you know, if you don't own white. If you don't have seaweed fabric, you have to find that. But pretty much I bought everything besides the white top from Joann's. So I got the fabrics and I got the paint and I also got transfer paper to make this. And then I had sushi. I had chopsticks at home, and so I put them in my hair, and I actually really love the way this turned out. I hope you do too. Yeah. Okay, so things you are going to need are fluffing, as I like to call it, seaweed looking fabric about ½ yard, white fabric about ½ yard, a cuttable liter bottle, a hot glue gun, an orange Sharpie, paintbrushes and sponges, scissors, orange paint, and Velcro. Okay, so I started by cutting out 2 equal pieces of fabric and I started drawing out what I thought to be a shrimp pillow design. So it's pretty much like a long heart, and the measurements are pretty much just based on how long your back is. I think mine came out to be about 17 inches. And here I'm just making it skinnier because I thought my shrimp looked a little too fat. And then I went ahead and put that second piece of fabric on top and started tracing out the shrimp. It was pretty easy to see through it since it's white. And then I went ahead and cut both of those out, leaving about 1 inch left over for when you sew. And I forgot to mention earlier that you're probably going to need a needle and thread or a sewing machine. Right here I am just cutting a snip out of the top so when you sew and flip it inside out, it doesn't leave an awkward straight line. Now I am just putting the pretty sides of the fabric together. My fabric is actually fuzzy, so those fuzzy sides are facing each other. Now I am going to go ahead and follow the lines and pin the whole thing so we can get to sewing it. And I'd just like to point out that my fabric is non-stretchy and slightly fuzzy, but not too fuzzy to the point where I can't paint it later on. Now I'm just going ahead and sewing it, and I am cutting off the excess with a pair of zigzag scissors, but you don't need zigzag scissors to do this. You can just cut them with regular scissors as well. Next, you're going to flip that bad boy inside out, and you'll end up with a heart shape, and you're going to start fluffing it up. And that actually took longer than I expected, but it's actually kind of fun to do, so. Then I went ahead and looked up a very detailed picture of shrimp on my phone, and with my mango kind of salmon colored acrylic paint, I went ahead and started splitting the shrimp in half into sections. And then from there, I went ahead and made these dashes kind of to separate the ab parts of the shrimp. Then I went ahead and kind of went crazy with my paintbrush back and forth to make this faded kind of look. And here I'm just adding more ab-like sections to my shrimp. And here we're just going back and forth again. There's really no right or wrong to this process. You really just go for it, and when you make mistakes, you can't even really tell. I made 10 mistakes here. Here I just made some more dots, and now I am putting abs on the abs of the shrimp, and these are kind of in C shapes, kind of crescent-ish, and then I went ahead and blurred those out as well. And then here's when you go ahead and use your sponge and you paint underneath the inside abs of the shrimp. Then I went ahead and got a small kind of needle-like thing. You can use a toothpick to make a bunch of dots on the shrimp, and it should turn out like this. And next is the part where we start working on the tail. So I went ahead and looked up a detailed photo of a shrimp tail. And here I cut off the top of a liter bottle with an X-Acto knife, and I started drawing out oval-like shapes for the tail portions. And I did 2 tails and then a middle kind of triangular circle-y part. And here I'm just kind of measuring out the size of the tail in comparison to the actual pillow. And then I kind of used those as comparisons, and this is pretty much the layout that I'm using, 2 right next to each other with a little point on top of it. After I got the correct shapes, I went ahead and washed off the highlighter I used to draw the designs, and then I went ahead and put a heavy textbook on top of them to kind of flatten them out while still remaining in a curved shape, which is kind of similar to what the actual tail is like. And now we get to paint the 3 tail portions. So here I am just dabbling in the concaved part of the tail, so the inside portion. And I went ahead and did that on all 3, and it turned out like this, very textured, somewhat dotty and clear. Then I went ahead and used a darker orange Sharpie on the top part, and I went ahead and used my finger to smear out the lines. And this pretty much was easier to see in comparison to when I tried to use the paint on top. So that's the reason why I used Sharpie. And this is pretty much what it turns out to look like. Then you go ahead and fold the inside portion of your shrimp, and you're gonna go ahead and sew that. And wouldn't life be easy if this was how fast you could actually hand sew things? Am I right? Yeah, thought so. Okay, so anyways, now we're gonna find out the positioning of how we want our tail pieces to be. And I went ahead and used a hot glue gun to do this part. And just to let you know, the hot glue does slightly melt the plastic, so it might turn out a little deformed, but it's really not noticeable by the time you're done. This is pretty much how it's turned out with the little tail. Next, I'm going to do the seaweed part. I measured out 6.5 inches for my personal preference, then I sewed those seams in. I went ahead and glued that onto the shrimp using a hot glue gun, but you could also use fabric glue. And just to let you know, one side is longer than the other so that the opening is on the side and not in the front. And my fabric is also stretchy, so make sure that it's long enough to fit around your body. Then I measured out where I want my Velcro pieces to go to close up the seaweed. And I also put these on the back of the shrimp, but that was a mistake, so I highly recommend just using elastic straps and kind of making a backpack out of the shrimp. I plan on doing that later on. And of course, the seaweed part is totally optional too. There's tons of shrimp sushi that does not have seaweed. And if you don't use seaweed, I highly recommend doing those back straps. And after I wrapped the seaweed around my body to measure out where the second piece of fabric should stick onto that Velcro. And the iron-on is optional, but I went ahead and got these transfer sheets and made a pixelated shrimp sushi online. And this printer always gets stuck and it drives me loco. Ignore the ET. This is the pixelated shrimp I made, and then I went ahead and followed the instructions on the transfer sheet packet, and pretty much I peeled off the back, aligned it where I wanted, used the wax paper, and ironed. And this is pretty much the end. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed.
What's the tea? What's the tea? What's the tea? What's the tea?